It had been years since I'd stayed in a house that felt like a home. College dorms, temporary leases with Craigslist roommates, and shared studio apartments across the country had made me forget what it meant to sit on a couch with a warm throw blanket and feel safe. Aunt Rachel's house in Cedar Hills brought that feeling rushing back the moment I stepped in. The walls were painted in soft pastel tones, framed family photos lined the hallway, and the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls seemed to drift constantly from the kitchen, even when she wasn't baking. I had come home not because I had everything figured out, but because I had nothing figured out. Graduation from college had come and gone, and while most of my friends had walked across that stage with confidence and post-grad plans, I had been smiling through a fog of uncertainty. No job offers. No clear future. Just a degree in communications, a few unpaid internships, and a vague sense that I was supposed to be doing something more. Rachel greeted me at the door with a long hug and a knowing smile. She didn't say much that first day. Just helped me carry my 2 overstuffed suitcases up to the guest room, made me a grilled cheese sandwich like she did when I was 10, and let me crash on the bed by 7 in the evening. I slept more soundly than I had in months. The first few days back felt like emotional detox. I sat out on the back porch watching the hummingbirds flit around her garden. I slept in. I took long showers and ate meals that didn't come from microwave trays. Rachel didn't pry, which I appreciated. She was always gentle that way, letting me arrive at conversations on my own time. It was about a week later, on a slow Sunday afternoon, that the moment happened. We were sitting in the living room, soft rain tapping against the windows, a classic jazz record playing softly in the background. Rachel sat on the recliner with a mug of chamomile tea in her hands. I was curled up under a blanket on the couch. She looked at me with that calm, steady gaze I had known since childhood. "So, Emma," she said quietly, "tell me about your life." There was no pressure in her voice. Just openness. The way she said it made the question feel like an invitation rather than an interrogation. I smiled faintly, then looked down at my lap. "Where do I even begin?" "Wherever you want," she replied. I hesitated. Then, the words started to come. "I thought finishing college would make me feel accomplished," I said. "But all I feel is lost." Rachel didn't interrupt. She just sipped her tea and waited. "I had all these plans, you know?" I continued. "I was going to get a job at a marketing firm in New York, move into an apartment with a skyline view, start writing my blog again, maybe even get a dog. But the internships didn't turn into anything. The applications I sent out didn't even get replies. And all my friends seem to be moving forward, while I'm back here." Rachel set down her mug and leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees. "It's okay to feel lost, Em. Everyone does, more often than they admit. But it feels like I'm falling behind," I confessed. "Like life is a race and I didn't even hear the starting gun go off." "I used to feel the same way," she said, and I looked up at her in surprise. "You?" She chuckled. "Absolutely. I finished college with an English degree and no idea what to do. I moved back in with your grandmother. I took odd jobs for almost a year before I figured out what I was passionate about." "What was it that helped you find your path?" I asked. "Listening to myself instead of everyone else," she said. "When I stopped comparing myself to others, I realized I loved working with people, especially teenagers and young adults. I got certified as a counselor, started working with at-risk youth, and everything slowly fell into place." I took that in. Rachel had always seemed so confident, so grounded. It was comforting to know she hadn't always been that way. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now, Emma," she said. "Sometimes, figuring out what you don't want is just as important." I nodded, letting the words settle. For the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders relax. Over the next few days, that conversation stayed with me. I started to open up more. Rachel and I would sit over morning coffee, talking about everything, my dreams of writing a memoir someday, the burnout I felt after juggling classes and side gigs, the relationships that didn't work out, and the creeping feeling that maybe I wasn't as strong as everyone thought. One afternoon, she took me to a local bookstore. "I know the owner," she said with a wink. "Let's see if they're hiring." It turned out they were. Part-time, just a few shifts a week, but enough to get me out of the house and into a space that smelled like old pages and possibility. I started working the counter, recommending books, organizing shelves, and occasionally writing reviews for the shop's website. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I loved talking to customers about stories and characters, and I loved the quiet rhythm of being surrounded by books. One evening, after closing up shop, I sat at the kitchen counter and told Rachel, I think I want to write full-time one day. Maybe work in publishing or even write my own book. She smiled. That sounds like something you'd be amazing at. You really think so? I've always thought so, she said. You've had a voice since you were a kid. You just needed the time and space to find it. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing. Nothing dramatic, just memories, journal entries, short essays about the confusion of early adulthood. But for the first time, I wasn't writing for grades or deadlines. I was writing for myself. As weeks passed, my life started to take on shape. I wasn't exactly where I wanted to be, but I was moving. That mattered more than I'd realized. I started freelancing for a local blog, interviewing artists and small business owners around town. I volunteered at the community center where Rachel worked, helping teens with college essays and resumes. Slowly, things began to align. And every step of the way, Rachel was there. Listening. Encouraging. Asking the right questions. One night, we were sitting on the back porch under a sky full of stars. I turned to her and said, "Thank you for asking me about my life." She looked surprised. "Of course, sweetie. No, I mean, really asking. No one else did. Not like you did." She reached over and took my hand. That's what family's for. We see each other even when the rest of the world doesn't. I squeezed her hand back. Months later, I received an email that changed everything. A literary website I admired had accepted one of my personal essays for publication. It wasn't huge, but it felt like the start of something real. I read the email aloud to Rachel, and she clapped her hands together like I'd just won an award. "You did it, Em," she said. "You're on your way." I smiled, holding back tears. "I'm just getting started." And I was. Looking back, it wasn't a big moment that turned my life around. It was that quiet afternoon, when Aunt Rachel looked me in the eye and asked a simple question, one that gave me permission to be honest, to pause, to begin again. She asked about my life, and in doing so, helped me rediscover it.